Ladies and gentlemen, let me welcome you to this memorial service for Vice Mayor Herb Skolnick. We have come together this evening to express our tribute to him and to honor his life. To begin this memorial service, I would like to ask Mayor Bill Griffin to please come forward and light a memorial candle. Please remain seated as Rabbi Ivan Watchman of Temple Shalom enters the chamber to read the 23rd Psalm. Please rise for the reading.
I chose this psalm, Psalm 23, because Psalm 23 was one of Herb's most favorite psalms. I dedicate this psalm to you, Herb, and I can't tell you how much we all miss you. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. And to that let us all say, Amen.
Please be seated. At this time, I would like to call upon Rabbi Watchman again, this time to offer a tribute and to pay homage to Herb Skolnick. Rabbi?
Mr. Mayor, your fellow commissioners, Shirley, beloved wife of Herb, and Claire, devoted sister, and my colleague and very good brother and friend, Father Foodie, distinguished guests and friends. Shirley and Claire, on behalf of all present, we extend to you in the first instance, Shirley, our heartfelt sympathy and deepest condolences on the passing of your beloved husband. If Herb could communicate with us in a spiritual sense, he would say, "Shirley, you know how I respected, loved, and treasured you ever since we first met. We were so fortunate to have shared so many beautiful experiences on life's journey. And I can assure you, Shirley, you know I was a man of determination. I will be with you eternally, locked safely in your beautiful soul." To you, Claire, his devoted sister, we all know how proud you were of Herb, both as a loving brother and as a man who had distinguished and excelled himself in public life. May God comfort both of you and grant you inner peace and serenity. My friends, we've assembled here this evening to eulogize and celebrate the uniqueness of Herb Skolnick's exceptional life. No one who knew Herb ever left his company without feeling attached to him in one form or another. On one occasion, I recall what he said to me in this city chamber. "Rabbi, you may not see me frequently at the temple services. Nevertheless, I want you to know that I am very proud of my Jewish heritage. Equally, Rabbi, I want you to know I am so privileged to be a loyal American citizen, something I will never, ever take for granted. It was a source of personal pride to be a graduate of the College of New York, as well as being honored to be an engineer for the Apollo moon program. There's no doubt about it, everybody would agree, that Herb was always proud to say, with humility and pride, that he had the privilege of serving this great nation, the United States, with glory and distinction in World War II. Herb, as we all know, was very much his own man. And I'm reminded of this when he once said, "Some people go to your temple, Rabbi, and they pray 3 times daily. I only call on the good Lord on the big occasions." One of those occasions was in World War II, when my buddies and I were facing grave danger. I quoted one of those very special verses from Psalm 23, and that's why I chose it tonight. And these were the lines that Herb quoted from when he was facing his buddies with this great danger. "Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, for you are with me." My friends, when we pause and reflect, what made Herb Skolnick so unique? A quote comes to mind from Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. "Great men stand out like solitary towers in the city of God." That quote fits in to the exemplary life of Herb Skolnick. To paraphrase the quote, Herb stood out like a solitary tower in this city commission chambers. In the words of Mayor Griffin, as reported in the Pompano Pellicret, quote, I didn't always agree with the vice mayor, but Herb could walk us through his logic on difficult projects. It is true that all of us who had the privilege and who came to know Herb recognized that Herb stood firm in all that he passionately believed in. He remained as solid as a rock. Equally true was that he had a warm and generous heart. He would stand up and certainly be counted for those whom he felt had a just cause. I can see Herb's twinkle in his eye, and with his disarming smile could melt a formidable foe, like the Floridian sun could melt an iceberg. It was this rare and unique combination of being firm and compassionate that was largely responsible for the many successful missions which Herb and his fellow commissioners were responsible to help this great city of Pompano Beach to be one which was a shining example to many other cities. The greatest legacy that Herb has left for his fellow commissioners was a ladder. The ladder of achievement. Herb's ladder knew no end to climbing and achieving. And those of his fellow commissioners who supported him through thick and thin would all agree that when it comes to enriching the lives of the citizens of Pompano Beach, for Herb, only the sky was the limit. Herb, as we pay homage to you tonight in the city chamber, where so many people have assembled from a broad section of the citizens of Pompano Beach, the city that became your second home, we know how fond you were of music. And in heaven, Herb, you can sing and sing hallelujah with all the angels in God's divine orchestra, knowing that you've left behind distinguished fellow commissioners who will always ensure that this great city of Pompano Beach will flourish, prosper, and grow from strength to strength. Yes, Herb, the message of your song in heaven is that the show must go on. Herb, on my way in this evening, and I'm sure I'm not the only one, who saw this magnificent, beautiful sunset that usually one only sees in Key West. But it was an omen for me because it reminds me of that beautiful passage. Herb, we promise you, all of us, both here and for those who couldn't make it tonight, that we will never forget what you achieved for us all in Pompano Beach from the very rising of the sun until the sun sets. Yes, our beloved friend, you will always remain a constant source of motivation and inspiration. May you rest in everlasting peace. Shalom to your beautiful soul. And to that let us all say, Amen.
Mayor Bill Griffin was a close friend and ally to Herb during these last 8 years, and I would like to call on Mayor Griffin for his words of tribute. Mayor.
Welcome. I find it befitting that we have gathered here this Tuesday evening at 7 o'clock to pay homage to Vice Mayor Herb Skolnick. During his 26 years, on Tuesday evening at 7 o'clock, for more than 1,000 meetings, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commissioner, Herb Skolnick served not only his city and his district, but always was looking out for the welfare of all. Herb always fought for the underdog. Herb always stood up for what he believed and what he thought would make our city a better place to live. Over the years, Herb Skolnick became a mentor. He was like family. Someone you could always depend on to bring a unified approach to tasks that were presented to the city. I have some very fond memories of Herb. In fact, the Friday before he went in for surgery, I met him at City Hall. Wanted to know how things were going. He said, well, I convinced the doctor to let me out of the hospital. And he was smiling about it. I said, Herb, why are you smiling? He says, well, Bill, to be honest with you, he says, I have tickets that I paid $62 a piece for the theater tonight. That was Herb. I always enjoyed Herb on the commission dais. When we were in deep debate about an issue confronting the city commission, usually very spirited. And then Herb would ask for the floor, and he'd like to share with us one of Herb's historical moments from 15 or 20 years ago. I'd lean over to Herb. I'd say, Herb, stay germane to the issue. And he'd look at me and say, I am. And he would continue on. Herb had a fixation for 10 by 20 parking spaces. Herb was so concerned that your car was not going to be victimized by narrow parking spaces. When I asked why, he would in great detail tell you of all the studies he had read, and that when you are taller and when you are older, the greater the door swing would be on your vehicle. Yada, yada, yada. That was Herb. One of the greatest pleasures that I have had on the City Commission, when I asked for support to name the Southwest Rec Center in Palm Aire, which Herb fought for all the years, my 8 years on the commission. To name the center after Herb Skolnick. So at that commission meeting, we renamed the Southwest Rec Center the Herb Skolnick Recreation Center. We took the vote, and the vote was unanimous. A true tribute to a man still alive and for all he has done for our city. Herb was asked when he was going to retire. When I get old. I am sad to say Herb has retired. To a higher calling. Herb's spirit will remain forever in this chamber. Shirley, thank you for Herb, and may God comfort you. Thank you.
Perhaps no other commissioner worked closer with Herb or worked as many years with Herb as did Pat Larkins. And I would like to have Herb's longtime friend and fellow commissioner Pat Larkins to share his eulogy with us. Pat.
To Shirley, our dear friend, certainly your sister. I was going to write something, and I was talking to Betty, and I said, you know, if you've known a guy as long as I've known Herb, and you've done so many things together, it's almost criminal to have to write a speech. Herb and I go a long way back, a long way. People don't remember this. When I first ran for a city commission some many years ago, I lost. Got beat soundingly by John Coffey, who lived in Palm Aire at the time. And Herb was one of several people who walked me outside the room at the Palm Aire, and it said, you know, you've just lost the race. You haven't lost the war. Don't give up. Your time will come. And it did come. And it came, and it came, and it came. And I'd like to thank Herb Skolnick for a lot of that. As a matter of fact, I'd like to thank Shirley that I taught him how to eat ribs when you didn't know about it in my house a lot of times. And so Herb and I had some real friendly days. Let me just tell you a couple of things he's done for our community. And I sat on the commission for about 14 years voting for a community center for Palm Aire. And it got turned down, I can think, 14 years consecutively. And the vote would always go 3 against and Herb and me for. And we started to call us, you know, Batman and Robin on the commission at that point. And we shared a great respect and affinity for each other. But let me tell you, for every unit they built in Palm Aire, Herb Skolnick insisted that those impact fees be used to improve Collier City. On every case. We never gave anything to Palm Aire. We didn't build sidewalks, anything. But Herb was the kind of guy who consistently made it a point that our commission took those impact fees came from Palm Aire, rightfully theirs, to do a lot of the parks and improvements that you now see in our western part of the city, and more particularly the Collier City area. Now he was a rather obnoxious guy when he got a point, and he would not change that. I mean, if he believed in something, I mean, he would go to the end. I think out of all of our some 25 years of relationship, Herb and I disagreed vehemently one time. And I mean, he was just sure that he was right. About 4 weeks after that disagreement, he called me and said, let's have lunch. Had lunch. He says, I want you to know I've talked to all my friends. And he said, you know, I got to apologize. You were right. And that was the only time I can ever remember, Shirley, that we ever disagreed and on an issue of importance. And he just called me out of blue sky one night and said, listen, let's have lunch tomorrow. And he just said, listen, I gave it some thought, and you were right. Our community is beholden to Herb Skolnick for his love and his concern and his sensitivity to all of this city. And I can just see him now just watching over us saying, you know, Pat, why are you making it so formal? And I would think that he probably wanted us to just be a little loose, Rabbi, with this whole thing, knowing her. But I don't think he's the kind of guy that wants us to be so formal, knowing her. But I can see him. Get to the point, Pat, get to the point. When I was on the commission, my only fear with Herb Skolnick was when he brought out, and Ed Phillips, I'm sure you can appreciate it, when he brought out that little yellow pad, and he started to read all those statements he had, and he would write about everything. I mean, from the beginning to the end, and you go like, Herb, when are you going to finish? So he made sure he didn't forget. I mean, he'd write every little note down. And he began to read, and he's speaking. Then when it got for time for the next person to speak, he said, get to the point, get to the point. That was the Herb Skolnick that we knew and we love. And in our community, we are forever indebted. And I think this city is indebted to Herb Skolnick. He had a special interest in the fire and rescue service in this city. And I mean, he was my expert in it. I mean, because he knew almost everything. He'd ride with the fire department guys. He'd make them bring stuff to his house. And he was an expert in it. And I listened to him because I trusted in what he said. I never thought at any time that he had one selfish motive when he talked about things. And I know so many people in Palm Aire now, that whole community, because of Herb, that I can go through there and I just on a first name basis and talk to people. And he made me feel comfortable that our community was no different, that color didn't matter, none of that mattered, except the person's heart. And Herb and I grew together. And lastly, I'd just like to say that when all is said and done, and we look back the 25 years of his history in this city, I just think all of us have to say, thank you, Herb. Thank you, Herb. Thank you, Herb.
In my capacity as city manager, it is my distinct honor and privilege to pay my respects to Vice Mayor Skolnick. Herb was my good friend, and he was one of my bosses. I never had to guess if he was speaking to me as a friend or as a city commissioner. And he never let our friendship get in the way of his duties and responsibilities as an elected official. From the first day, I knew that friends were friends and business was business. He was Herb, our vice mayor, or just plain Vice. He was also affectionately called around the office as the Herbster, the Herbmeister, and Herbivore, and even Herbie. He loved them all. Herb had his nickname for other people, and one of his favorites was Ace. How you doing, Ace? See you later, Ace. I can tell you that I knew when he was happy, when he called me Ace. Otherwise, it was just plain Hargett or some other things I won't mention. He frequently called the office for information, and I always knew if he got what he called for, because he'd always end the call with, "You can go back to sleep now, Ace." He liked to call some of us younger people kids, and I think it was more in recognition of his age than our youth. At times, he was a man of many words, and it was not uncommon for a fellow commissioner or the manager to whisper down the diocese, "Herb, your 3 minutes are up." He was a man of good humor and had a story or life experience about almost any subject. One of my favorites was about his dog that he trained not to eat. And then there's a story about the donkey that he used to provoke as a youngster. His stories were classics the first 5 or 6 times you heard them. Each year, Herb and Shirley would go out west on vacation, and he was always worrying that something would happen while he was gone. He always left a phone and fax number where he could be reached. And of course, there was no better time for practical jokes. I can remember in the year following the approval of the timeshare units in Palm Aire, we faxed Herb a bogus news article that the city commission had met in an emergency meeting and had approved an additional 1,000 timeshare units in Palm Aire. Well, it didn't take Herb long for Herb to call. He had already priced the return flight, and he was ready to do battle. And I can tell you it was difficult to let him down easy. Another year, he was faxed a bogus article that the city commission had eliminated all 10 by 20 parking spaces in the city. And I think we were lucky that he eventually joined in the laughter. Herb was a public figure, but he was also a very private and proud man. In all the years that I knew him, I never once heard him complain about the aches and the pains of growing older or about his health problems. On more than one occasion, Herb had remarked to me that if anything should ever happen to him, he had had a good life, and he had Shirley to thank for that. Herb had no bosses save one. His wife, Shirley, was the love of his life, and there was no mistake about it. No matter how deep or involved the discussion or how occupied he was with city business, whenever Shirley called, Herb was quick to respond. He was a man with a sturdy conscience and a steadfast heart, and that was through thick and thin. He was a man of sure purpose, and he knew what he wanted. He was not one to go with the flow, but he pursued his own destiny, and he was able to stand alone and was firm and confident in himself. He loved the city that he served for more than a quarter of a century. Herb spoke to me often about his days at NASA working on the LIM, and he was so proud of this model that he kept displayed on his desk. And he must have told me 1,000 times how to put it together. He quite enjoyed being referred to as a rocket scientist. Herb was very proud of his Saturday morning group, and he relied heavily on their input on the issues. Of all the things that had come his way in all his years of service, Herb was most proud of having the Southwest Recreation Center named the Herb Skolnick Center. It was a most deserving honor and tribute by the City Commission, and one that he cherished. Relying on his good humor and to commemorate this event, his office was affectionately but mysteriously plastered with numerous copies of the front page headlines with his picture, where they still remain tonight. Herb and I are both engineers, and we supposedly think with those portions of the brain dedicated to facts and logic. Whenever we disagreed, Herb would always let me know that I was thinking with the wrong side of my brain. Sometimes our discussions were loud and enthusiastic, and you could have eavesdropped from the next room or even the next floor. But when it was over, and we went on to other things as if it never happened. You never had to guess what Herb's position was on an issue. He challenged the staff. We were, and we are better because of his expectations. When it came to city business, Herb tolerated nothing less than our best, and I can personally attest to that. He was a champion in his own right and pursued those things he believed in. He championed the city's emergency medical services. He was a stalwart in the yardarm case, led the charge against Enron, championed the development and protection of the city's potable water supply and the development and expansion of a water reuse system. Herb loved the arts, the theater, classical music, ballet, and the opera. If he was here tonight, I'm sure his message would be, the show must go on. And so it will. District 5 will elect another commissioner. But Herb cannot be replaced. He was an institution. As the years go by and we look back on this part of the city's history, Herb will be remembered as a man of principle, a man of his own destiny, and with a true sense of his worth before God. In so many ways, Herb was a man for all seasons, and that will be his legacy. A Tibetan Lama once said, "We die not because we are ill, but because we are complete. Illness is the occasion of our dying, but not the cause." I'm confident that Herb was complete and at peace with himself. We can be thankful for all the years of his life that he gave to the residents of this city. I can only imagine all the lives that he touched during his life. This is a better place because of Herb Skolnick. So on with the show. Herb was also a man with many friends, and Al Lascelles was one who could always be counted on in time of need. And I'd like to call on Al at this time for his comments in tribute to Herb. Al?
Just so you understand, I'm not very good at this. Mr. Harkey gave me 2 minutes, and I'll do my best to give you some kind of a little of what Herb was, a little bit. First thing, Herb loved Shirley. He loved her. Herb loved this city, Pompano Beach. I don't think anybody doubts that. He loved it. He loved the Florida Philharmonic. It was part of him. Herb and I have gone to the Philharmonic for the past 20 years. He even longer than that. Herb and Tim Tracy brought the Philharmonic to Pompano Beach several times at no charge. The whole city could have attended for a ticket that normally would cost $30 to $50. We had it here in Pompano for free. Herb was proud of the fact that he was part of the group that sent a man to the moon and brought him back. Herb loved his friends. My 2 minutes are up? Some longtime friends. I guess his oldest friend in Palm Aire was Herb Highshare. Highshare knew him like anybody, like his son, or the dearest friend. Herb had a campaign treasurer from the time that he ran for office, and that was Cy Roberts. He's as close to him as anybody could be. Then he had some golf partners. And one of them that played with him for a long time was Abe Mintz. I don't know if he's here tonight, but he played with him regularly. In closing, ladies and gentlemen, this city and those that knew Herb will miss him in the future. Thank you.
And last, but by no means least, who better to speak on a very personal note than Herb's sister, Claire Masters. Claire, please come forward and share your comments about Herb with us.
The orator of our family has passed on. You are all aware of his achievements in his political career in Pompano Beach. Herb was very proud of the progress made during his years of service. I'd like to tell you some of the things that happened in his childhood. Our father passed away at a very early age, leaving my mother with 6 young children. Herb was the youngest of the boys. I was the youngest of the girls. My older sisters, who were still in school, took on the responsibility for our support. They worked after school, weekends, and holidays, and brought their pay to Mom so that she would maintain the household as best she could. Charity was never an option. We never felt deprived or poor. Mom made sure we all had lots of love and care, even though times were very hard. Mom's insistence on education was a primary requisite for all of us, though it had not come easy with Herb and me. Mom would wake him up to go to school in the morning, but he would have alternate excuses for not wanting to go. Either she woke him up too early or too late. He fought violently, but you couldn't fool around with my mom when education was involved. Herb was an adventurous kid. One winter, he and a friend decided to go to the frozen waterway and explore the ice covering. As luck would have it, the block of ice they were playing on broke loose, and they were stranded. Fortunately, their screams were heard, and they were rescued by police. Herb and I were very close as children. One holiday, either Christmas or Hanukkah, we decided to take our savings, all of $5, and buy ourselves presents. We went to the local candy store and selected an array of junk, including a set of poker chips and other stuff, totaling $5. When we brought home our goodies, Mom went ballistic. For $5, she could feed the whole family. She made us return the gems to the store owner, but he was glad to have gotten rid of it, so he would not refund the money. Well, Herb and I got a credit slip, and each day on the way home from school, we would stop off and buy 5 cents worth of candy. In those days, it was a lot. It took us a long time to use up the credit, but it was fun. One day, Herb told me he had to, quote, bring my mother, quote, to school because of some infraction. That would never do, so we decided to say Mom was sick, but his big sister would come instead. I was a few grades ahead of him. When I showed up at his class and was listening to the complaints, Herb started making all sorts of funny gestures behind the teacher's back. I burst out laughing, and the teacher realized what had happened. She threw us both out of the classroom, warning that when she said "mother," that's what she meant. Although his childhood was colorful, his mature years were pleasurable and gratifying. He met Shirley at an early age, and together they became an inseparable pair. Herb served in the Army, graduated with a degree in engineering, and once out of the Army and seeking employment where jobs were scarce, he applied to an employer saying he would work for the company for 3 weeks without any pay if, after that period, and he proved his capabilities, he would expect to be put on the payroll. That's exactly what happened. His working career is well known. After retiring, he and Shirley moved to Palm Aire. Herb needed more stimulation than golf and leisure. His active mind was always ready for challenge. He decided that he would like to become active in politics, seeing the need for many opportunities to help Pompano grow. His interests covered the entire city, from the disadvantaged to all others. He was always interested in doing the right thing for his city. Every day was a challenge, but he loved every minute of it. God must have needed an honest, intelligent, and cooperative counsel because he selected the perfect one in Herb. Goodbye, dear brother. We will think of you often, always with love. Thank you for listening.
We do have a special presentation that to be made this evening, and at this time I would like to call on Commissioners Lieberman and Jacobs.
Shirley, this morning when we called our county commission meeting to order, our first official act was to pay tribute to Herb. For those of us who have served in elected office, he was more than a friend. He was a mentor to many of us, and we couldn't help but pay that tribute to him today. In memory of Herb, we have an expression of sympathy, which Commissioner Jacobs, Commissioner Scott, and Commissioner Egliston, as you know, represent the city of Pompano. I was in my county commission district, and Herb promised I could be emeritus for as long as I would like. So we want to just take a minute today and remind everybody of why he was so special. It's with deep regret that the Broward County Commission extends its condolences and sympathy to Shirley Skolnick, wife of Vice Mayor Herb Skolnick.
As a longtime friend of the Commission, Herb Skolnick served on the Pompano Beach City Commission for 26 consecutive years, working tirelessly to promote the betterment of the city, endeavoring to bring peace and tranquility to the community. The Vice Mayor championed many causes, including cultural arts, environmental preservation, safety, and security for all residents.
As a decorated World War II veteran, Herb served his nation with dignity and pride, but he didn't stop there. Herb continued the cause and determined to make a difference in his community. He entered an embattled political arena and quickly became a professional advocate for the local issues that changed the course of the city of Pompano Beach forever.
We will always be indebted to him for his passion to make a difference. His responsibilities and duties stretched far and wide, and we are honored to have had the opportunity to work with him.
He will be sincerely missed by all the Broward County Commission, and it's signed by all 9 county commissioners as a tribute to Herb and all that he has done to make our community a better place in which to live.
Thank you, Commissioners. We all know how Herb loved and admired the Florida Philharmonic, and that he was a devoted follower of classical music. It is only fitting that we acknowledge his love of music with a classical version of Ave Maria as performed by soprano Wendy Reynolds.
benedicta tu in mulieribus, et benedictus, fructus ventris tui, Iesu. Ave Maria.
I now present the Pompano Beach Fire Rescue and Broward Sheriff's Office Honor Guard to present the flag to Shirley Skolnick. I now call upon the Rabbi Watchman to conclude the memorial service. Rabbi.
Prior to bringing this service to a conclusion, I would also like to acknowledge the presence of Sheriff Jenny's personal chaplain, a very personal friend of mine, Reverend Braswell. God bless you. To conclude our memorial service for Herb, I have chosen the last lines of the Kaddish prayer recited for the departed. Moshe, Shalom Bimromav, Hu Yaseh, Shalom Aleinu, V'yal Kol Yisrael, V'yimeru, Amen. Yahweh Shalom, Yahaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu, V'yal Kol Yisrael, Yahweh Shalom, Yahweh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu, V'yal Kol Yisrael. Let there be peace in heaven and earth for us and all humankind, for now and evermore. Let there be peace. Let love never cease until the Messiah comes speedily in our days. Oh, let there be peace, shalom. Let love never cease, shalom. Oh, save us from disaster. Let peace prosper everywhere. Oh, say shalom. Yahweh say shalom. Aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael. V'nomar Amen. God bless your dear memory from now and forevermore. And to that let us all say, Amen.
I respectfully request that all present to remain seated until Rabbi Watchman and the family exit the chambers. I would also announce that there will be refreshments in the conference room and behind the auditorium in celebration of Herb's life. I thank you for being present, Shirley. Thank you very much.